Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 42 of Logicast, our reInvent special. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicast, and I'm joined, as always, by our lead cloud engineer, Jon Goodall, who told me off yesterday for not introducing him with his job title, so I've made sure I've shoehorned that in today. How are you doing today, Jon?
Oh, I'm much happier now. I'm much happier. Although I'm cold because my heater broke.
But you have bought a new one. You've been telling me all about that. Are you hoping to expense it or something? Is that why you've been telling me?
I could probably claim the tax back on it, but I'm not sure it's worth the faff for 10 quid's worth of VAT.
Fair enough. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Jon's heating problem. We are joined today by a very special guest, Jon Topper of the Scale Factory, who is an AWS ambassador. So welcome, Jon. How are you doing today?
I'm not bad. I'm recovering from my week in Vegas, where the air is so dry that all of the soft tissues of your body start to become crispy. So I'm now rehydrating and catching up on sleep, and also catching up on all the things that I missed at reInvent, because even being there doesn't necessarily warrant you seeing everything. So that's what's going on for me this week, pretty much.
Yeah, I think 192 announcements, God knows how many sessions, spread across 12 hotels. And if there's only one of you, then that's quite a difficult
There's only so much you can achieve.
Yourself across. Yeah. So, Jon, tell us a bit about yourself, the bits that I haven't already shared. What do you do?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm the I guess founder and CEO of the Scale Factory. We're an AWS consulting partner working with SaaS businesses, and in fact, one of the things I got back from reInvent, other than a chest infection, is this shiny award here, which you can just about see. This is the Partner of the Year award,
very
global SaaS Partner of the Year award. So we're really proud of that. So I'm going to be insufferable about this. I'm going to be telling everybody about it for the next probably month or year, to be honest. So that's. I had to make room in my suitcase for that one, but as a seasoned reinventor, you kind of learn to make room for swag of various sorts. So I run the Scale Factory. We're based out of the UK. As you mentioned, I'm an AWS ambassador, which is a title bestowed upon me by AWS for the fact that I'm active in the community as someone who works for an AWS partner, which is different from the community builders and the AWS heroes who get better swag, arguably, but sort of similar in that we're all out there in the community, sort of doing things like this actually, and running user groups and creating content and that sort of thing. And I do co-organize and occasionally host the AWS User Group UK, which is so called because it was the first user group in this country, but which the regional user groups would probably prefer that I refer to as the London user group, because it is in London, and not just the UK as a whole. So all AWS all the time, as you might imagine, is basically the only thing going on in my life.
Sounds a bit like that way, yeah, absolutely. So, but you did inspire Jon and I to go on and set up the AWS user group Brighton, which
very good.
Now run his first
third one,
3 meetups, and
excellent.
Gathering some momentum, which is nice.
Love to see.
You mentioned swag there in your preamble. I can see you're sporting your reInvent hoodie, and
that side, scuppered by the mirroring of this camera. Yeah, there we
go. And you showed us your award. Did you bring any other great swag back from Vegas?
So I tend to go fairly light on swag. I brought a Datadog t-shirt back for my wife because they're very soft and she likes to sleep in the soft swag t-shirts I bring back from conferences. But the best swag I got this year was from the AWS Well Architected team. I sat in on a round table. We're pretty active in the Well Architected community, and at the round table they handed out swag, Yeti coffee mugs, the coffee to the flasks, with a AWS well architected logo etched into the side. So nice sturdy coffee mug, not the usual kind of tat you get, an actual.
It's a bit better than
branded thing.
This then.
Yep.
Swag you can use. That's what we
swag
like.
You can use. Yeah,
actually use. Yeah.
My pint of coffee that I had to have yesterday morning in order to get back into the time zone was still warm by the time I got to the bottom of it, which is unusual, I think.
Yeah, my cafetiere that I was tucking into this morning was definitely cold by the time I got into my third cup, so I think I could probably make use of one of those.
Yeti.
Well, you've got two of the community builder ones now, Carl. They're really good.
Yeah, but I just use them as ornaments.
You do have to make that decision, don't you? Am I going to use my swag as an actual piece of useful thing, or am I going to use it as an ornament? You probably can't see behind me because it's all out of focus, but I've got an AWS ambassador's cap sat on my shelves back there as acting as an ornament rather than an actual cap. Although I did wear it a couple of times while I was at reInvent to clip my camera to it. So I was trying to capture what it's like to be at reInvent for those of us who can't make it. I haven't yet edited the footage. It looks like it'd be quite a mountain to climb, so it might never happen. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, maybe you should get AI to do it for you.
No, maybe not. Let's not and say I did.
And on that note, we are actually here to talk about AWS services. We may even talk a little bit about AI. So as regular listeners to the Logicast podcast will know, I collate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John Goodall and I pick a selection of the articles from the newsletter that we want to talk about in a bit more detail. So we've got a few articles this week, which are mostly announcements that came out of reInvent. And the first one is an article on the New York Times, which I've been struggling a little bit with, actually, because when I shared this article, I didn't realize it was kind of paywalled. So I think I must have used my free view to look at it the first time. And then when I went to look at it again, it's like, hang on a minute, you want money now for me to look at this. But anyway, that's their business model, and that's fair enough. But the article was about the introduction of Q, an AI chatbot for businesses that Amazon launched at reInvent last week. So I'm going to have to address you by your.
You can use my surname. Use my surname. People do refer to me as Topper. I will respond to just my surname on its own.
Okay, then, Topper. What do you think about this?
So. I think the wider context of this is probably the interesting thing, which is that arguably Amazon has been a little behind other vendors on the generative AI front, and this is a sort of basically reInvent this year was about them scrambling to catch up. I would say that they're managing it. I think that they're doing a reasonable job of that. But they're really keen to position themselves as market leaders in a market where they are arguably not market leaders. And so Amazon Q it's kind of a chatbot, right? It's essentially similar to if you've used OpenAI ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. It's a sort of chatbot thing. It's generative, so it's prone to making things up. But the interesting thing about Q, I think, other than the fact they've called it Q, which makes it extremely difficult to search for, and puts me in mind of that odious prick from the Star Trek Next Generation series who gets
everyone is making that comparison. Everyone,
right? So the thing's interesting is they're embedding it in a lot of different things. So it will pop up in the console if you're using the console. There's integration with AWS Chatbot. You can integrate it with VS Code, which is something I've tinkered with recently, actually on the journey back. But also with things like QuickSight and Amazon Connect, which both of which had some form of AI kind of integration anyway, and I guess has just been rebranded and is now using the Q engine. So it's in preview, right? I think that's the thing to remember. Although it's slathered over everything, it's considered to be in preview, and so it's not expected to be good at this point. And in many places, it is not. But in a few ways, it is. I spun up the VS Code integration, and it helped me write some Python, a language that I don't really know. And in the VS Code integration, the bits of code it suggests, you can just click an icon and it copies it into where your cursor is and stuff. So, it's all right. I've used things like Claude and ChatGPT to do similar things. It seems to be about on a par, but there are plenty of people posting examples of where they've asked Q questions in the console and it's given them ludicrous answers about sort of AWS services, which you would expect it to be an expert on, given the training data. So, way to go yet, maybe, but certainly worth playing with and an interesting first stab at that sort of thing.
So, Goodall, I know you were...
I have two answers to my surname. It's a bloke thing, I think.
I think you were playing with this morning, weren't you? Didn't
I've
you?
been playing with it on and off kind of all week, really, after I got over that initial scare on the pricing, because that's my biggest gripe with this. In preview, it's mostly free. When it's out of preview, using it in the console is $25 per user per month. So that's going to get expensive really fast. But once I got over that little scare, I've been playing with it quite a lot, mostly writing IAM policies, because writing IAM policies is awful. And the policy generator is a bit shite too, to be really honest. You have to know exactly what you're looking for, rather than I don't quite know what permission I need for blocking reserved instance purchases or running SSM commands or whatever. So you can kind of ask it and it spits out something reasonable, but you do still need to be able to probe it to get a proper answer out of it, as you were saying, because it had a funny one where I asked it sort of 2 or 3 different questions. Says, okay, now put that all together with the previous answers into a combined policy for me, and it did that. But it also added a whole bunch of S3 permissions that I hadn't asked for. So.
Yes, yeah, I think, this sort of thing. I guess preview generative services are always going to have a little bit of that, and I think the some of these things are only as good as the training data they've been given or the guardrails that have been wrapped around them. And my concern with sort of any and all generative AI stuff actually is that if you are using it for things like, particularly around IAM policies, there's a phenomenon that I blogged about a couple of years ago that I call short mean time to hello world, which is where if you're building something and you're following along with tutorials on the web, many of those tutorials will suggest that you just use ** on your IAM policy or chmod 777 on your uploads directory and that sort of thing. Where yes, that does get your thing demonstrably working, but it brings in a whole host of potential security issues with it as well. And the internet is just full of blog posts of people doing this kind of crap without really warning people about it. And so if a corpus of training data that a generative AI tool has been trained on has been trained on the internet, then some of the things it's going to be telling you will be those kind of collective bad practices that everyone does. And I think it's on AWS really to make sure that Q doesn't suggest anything dumb like that when it's pitching it as a sort of intelligent assistance for its own service. And so it'll be interesting to see how they constrain that and how over time they make sure that it's doing the right things.
I mean, it didn't give me any stars, admittedly, but I was asking quite targeted questions. It's like, what permission do I need to use the run command in SSM? Run command and send command. Bang, bang. Okay, helpful. But it wasn't give me a permission that allows me to do these 17 things. Okay, just star on it. I targeted questions. And I think that's part of the, what do they call it, prompt engineering for LLMs generally, is targeted questions. Don't be too vague with it.
Yes, yeah, just like talking to DevOps people, really.
So what you guys seem to be saying is I can't replace Goodall for $25 a month just yet.
But give it 12 months and maybe you'll be there. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to see investment in this, right? Amazon care about being seen as good at this stuff, and although they're not great today, they'll be throwing manpower at it, and so I think you can expect it to improve. I mean, if nothing else, Amazon is good at shipping, right? AWS are good at shipping new features, new changes, and I think we can definitely expect to see this get better over the next 12 months.
One of the things that I picked up on at the AWS on Tour events a little while ago was it was a Code Whisperer demo, but same kind of concept. Was they're built for low value tasks that you have to do. That's what they're really good at. Like, give me some test data for this. And if it's a bit wrong, it kind of doesn't matter, but it's just giving you this big block of data. Brilliant. You haven't had to sit there and write it all. So I think it feels like that still.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. I think to your point, Carl, about replacing John, I think what it will probably
couldn't even replace you, Carl. Let's be honest here.
Well, what I think it will do is impact on juniors and sort of newcomers to the industry to some extent, because with you, John, looking at your IAM policies and going, why is that S3 bucket policy there? You're credulous of it, right? You're like, I don't think that needs to be there. The sort of more junior end of the market might well be just accepting of and go, oh well, I guess the tool says it must be this, so it must be this, and sort of rob them of that learning experience to an extent. So I think there's a I think the things like universal work from home and universal generative AI tooling definitely has the possibility or the potential to impact on the career development of earlier stage individuals. I think that's something to be worried about. But I don't know what the fix is for that ultimately.
Well, watch this space. Let's change things up a bit now and skip on to our second article for this week, which was about the launch of a new storage tier for S3, the new S3 Express One Zone tier, which Amazon claim is up to 10 times faster than S3 standard, which sounds amazing. But why won't we need it, Goodall?
You don't, unless you have very, very specific workloads. You don't.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, it also sounds like a '90s boy band, don't you think? S3 Express One Zone. You can just feel the key changes, the sort of standing up off of the high stools as they kind of belt out a new.
I've
new
got
ballad.
Backstreet Boys songs in my head now. I hate you.
You're welcome. Nobody needs this. Rather, the characteristics that it provides are characteristics that very few workloads need on a sort of general basis. This is single millisecond first byte read and write support with, as you say, 10x performance over regular S3. We're talking about interactive video editing and workloads like that. For the most part, it's probably not going to be necessary. They can achieve this because it's only in one availability zone, so you lose a bunch of durability and availability. But I think it's got a 99.95% uptime guarantee on it in that zone. So not really for your kind of really critical workloads. But when I was digging into this a bit this morning, doing my homework for your podcast, as it were, the thing that I found interesting is that there are I guess two things that's interesting about it. One is that it provides a new directory-based file layout. So rather than the sort of key-based object thing that you're used to in regular S3, this is actually a hierarchy of objects. And I kind of wonder whether that's going to find its way into other parts of S3, because some of that sort of key management stuff and the way that storage performance, everything is based on how you structure your keys. Although I think that's been solved for to some extent already, is not going to be a concern with this particular offering. So interested to see where that goes. And the other thing is that when you're talking to this, part of the way it can provide the level of performance that it does is that your SDK, when you're writing codes to use this, you create a session and then you use that session to interact with the S3 API, which is not what you typically do with S3. So interesting sort of change there. So you probably wouldn't want to, or you wouldn't be able to expect to just take something that's in existing vanilla S3 today, move it over to S3 Express Boyzone, and have it work exactly as it did, but with different performance characteristics. As ever, you sort of need to write your software around these things. But pretty interesting. I mean, I'm sure there are legitimate use cases for this, but most people probably don't have those.
It feels very much like this was either something that AWS needed themselves for all their Gen AI training data, so they just kind of went, oh, we'll just see if other people need it, or one big customer asked for it.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon for one big customer asking for something to make its way into a product. We were working with a large customer of AWS in the UK 5 years ago or so, maybe, and some of the sort of more recent VPC networking changes were definitely informed by those conversations.
No, I've got experience
possibly
in
some
that
things with ECS as well. So
yeah. I used to work for a large financial services institution in London, and every once in a while we'd go, this thing, it's not in the London region, but it is in Ireland. And then magically it was on the roadmap for London in the next quarter.
Yes, yep.
Well, if nothing else, it's given me some more inspiration for parody songs. So I'll add it to the list of parody songs that I'd like someone to write for us for our social media. So
get Amazon Q to do it.
Maybe I will.
So generative AI typically very bad at writing lyrics or poetry, because all it's doing is spitting out tokens. It has no concept of rhyming. So if you are going to write anything about it, make sure it's prose.
I did
I've got
actually.
ChatGPT to write a lot of haikus, and it's quite good at a haiku.
Haikus is fine, yeah, but pretty bad at rhyming schemes. Or so try asking it to do anything in iambic pentameter, and you're in for a bad time.
I did witness a localized performance of Fairy Tale of New York last week that had been co-written by ChatGPT. So,
okay, well,
but I guess the humans helped it with the rhyming.
Probably.
Anyway, let's move on to the next article, which is an article on the AWS News blog about some new controls that have been added to Control Tower to help customers meet digital sovereignty requirements. So the article goes on to say there's a set of 65 purpose-built controls to help you meet your digital sovereignty requirements. So we're seeing a lot of stuff about digital sovereignty at the moment, not just Control Tower. But what are your thoughts on this one, Topper?
Well, did you put this on the list because I'm a massive fan of Control Tower?
Absolutely.
It's my favourite AWS service.
And I feel fairly strongly about digital sovereignty, because if you'd asked me about it 3 years ago, I'd have said you're an idiot. But now it's a thing.
Yeah. So we've deployed, I think, 50 or so Control Towers over the last 2 or 3 years. Like we're sort of very, very hands on with Control Tower. It's a very good match for SaaS workloads, because often SaaS customers are using AWS accounts per tenant as an isolation layer, and so Control Tower gives you a whole bunch of useful things for managing multiple accounts ultimately. So digital sovereignty, I mean, maybe worth defining that for your audience, because it's a bit of a weird term. People often use it in terms of I guess geographical location of data.
Data residency.
Data residency is
before,
often kind of bolted into the same kind of sentences as that. But in I think the way it's being used here, we're talking more about the ability of an individual or a company to have complete control over its data, not regardless of sort of location, but all the other controls that you might care about as well. So it's about sort of autonomy and agency around your digital footprint, I guess. And the controls that have been added here, it's a little difficult actually in the documentation to find what are new controls versus what was already there, because the Control Tower has hundreds of controls already for other reasons, and sort of controls that are aligned with different compliance regimes. A lot of our customers are using or are compliant with ISO 27001, and they're using like the Control Tower controls for that. As far as I can tell, most of the things that they've done here is take an existing set of controls and categorize them as digital sovereignty controls and add some more things to them. And I think the new controls are really about things like being able to turn off types of connectivity and to turn off publicly addressable storage resources and those sorts, or at least alarm on them. The Control Tower mechanism is excuse me, the controls are although they're part of Control Tower, they're implemented by other services. So things like preventive controls are all service control policies. Detective controls are AWS config, which as of this reInvent, you can now run more cheaply because you can turn down the frequency of the checks. That's been a nasty surprise for some of the customers we've worked with. And proactive controls, which is where you're using a CloudFormation guard hook, I think they call, to prevent somebody from making that change using CloudFormation. So these are new controls that are implemented in those ways to either stop people doing things that relate to moving data outside of your region, or flag an alarm or take automated action if that does actually happen.
Yeah, it's important to note that extra CloudFormation kind of control, because you can craft an SCP that breaks CloudFormation because of how CloudFormation works with certain things. That's fun.
Yep, you can craft an STP that prevents you from logging into your account, and then you can't remove it. So SCPs are quite a blunt instrument. I think one of the other things that has changed, and I think they may be referring to that in this release as well, is that regional denial. It used to be a Control Tower config that would inform an SCP. I think they've changed how that works. I'm not entirely sure how. I haven't really dug into the detail there, but it was always a bit of a bolt on. Lots of good stuff coming in Control Tower, though. One of things that I did manage to attend while I was out in Vegas was a roundtable on, or provided by the Control Services team, who cover Control Tower as well as config and a number of other things. There's lots on their roadmap. Loads of things that we're asking for have been asked for by other partners and are on the roadmap. So if there's something that Control Tower doesn't do for you today that is annoying you, it's not only annoying
apart
you,
from
it's
being really
annoying
slow.
me. Those are improvements they're making as well. There's a lot of so they added API some API stuff for Control Tower. It used to be the case that you could exclusively deliver it using ClickOps, and now some of that is API driven. Some of the control application again used to be ClickOps. It became API driven. And now you can apply those in parallel, whereas you used to have to sit and wait for them to complete. So they're listening to these things, and I think it's partners that feel this the most, because if we're deploying 50 control towers and we're sat having to wait, for 20 seconds in between every button press, so you can see that sort of racks up pretty quickly. So
I mean, there's definitely a reason that other ways of managing organizations have come into existence. There's definitely reasons for that, because CloudFormation being the one that comes to mind, because I like that one, because CloudFormation plus a bit, and it all just kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that there are plenty of people out there who firmly believe that everything should be terraformed, and so a lot of the things that Control Tower can do for them, they're trying to do in Terraform, and I would argue that is a waste of time, because it's actually very easy to do in CloudFormation within Control Tower. We're sort of starting to think about. I guess this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but the distinction between an account baseline and a workload. Our belief is that you should run your account baseline using Control Tower and the CloudFormation bits that live in there, because that's slower moving and less likely to change, and probably owned by a platform team. But then deliver your workloads in however you want, right? Use Terraform or Pulumi or whatever else to do that. And the key thing is keeping that distinction and understanding what lives in which bit. But not everybody will be convinced by that. Unfortunately for those individuals, it's typically the CTO that's buying this sort of thing, and the CTO is buying it because he wants ISO 27001 compliance, and so everyone will do as they're told ultimately. But it is a conversation we have on the regular with engineers from the companies that we're working with.
I like the term regional denial. I think it's something I've been suffering from myself, having lived in the south of England longer than I ever lived in the north. But a bit off topic.
Denial the sovereignty of Las Vegas. I think deny that exists, apart from that 1 week of the year where we have to go to hear about all the good AWS stuff that's happening.
Excuse me. Let's skip on to our next article then, which is also firmly in your wheelhouse, Mr. Topper. And this is about announcing SaaS quick launch for AWS Marketplace. So
yes,
something exciting for you guys?
I mean, in theory, yes. In practice, this is the first we'd heard of it, which is always a great sign. There are some things that are sort of coming down the path where actually we're in the loop on it, but this was new to us. So quick launch in the AWS Marketplace is a mechanism by which you, as a SaaS vendor, can write some CloudFormation templates that can then be run easily by the buyer. So the buyer's in the console, they go to the marketplace, they say, I'd like to buy this shiny SaaS solution. They click quick launch, having set up a handful of things, and then that CloudFormation runs inside their account to set up the components for that SaaS. And I think that's I've got a number of opinions about this. I guess one is that it's not really apparent who's then responsible for running that infrastructure that it creates once it's in your account. Two, setting up, buying something from the marketplace that runs inside the customer's account, that doesn't feel like SaaS to me. SaaS is as a service, not as a bundle of things that I have to look after in my account. So there's a sort of question mark about actually, is that really
I guess
SaaS?
It depends what it's installing, because the one that sticks out to me is Datadog, right? And as you say, It's a way of just launching CloudFormation stacks. And if you've got a Datadog account and you need to hook it into your AWS account, you hit a give me CloudFormation stack button, and it opens up the console with here's the template we wrote, run this, and it just creates some permissions and a Lambda for sending logs, and that's about the size of it. So it feels like a friction reduction exercise.
Yes, I think that's broadly what it is, right? That's what's going on here. I mean, marketplace as a whole is again something I have opinions about. In that, I think that there are certain things that sell very well in marketplace, and I think it is your Datadogs, it's your FortiGates, your kind of like things that you and I would consume as engineers. In a manner that looks quite a lot like an AWS service, right? It just happens to be provided by another vendor, and so I think it's a good match for that sort of vendor. And I think aside from the fact that I've got some questions about the in the docs, you end up creating a service linked role in your account that is what Marketplace then uses to deploy that CloudFormation. It's very similar. If you're a Control Tower user, there are a handful of roles that Control Tower creates in your member accounts for managing things familiar. Like IAM and IAM Identity Center and so forth. So if you're using Quick Launch, you're creating a linked service role inside your account for Marketplace to use to deploy those Marketplace components and that CloudFormation. But the permissions that requires seems to involve a lot of like, hey, give us access to parameter store.
It's delegated admin to a great extent, because if you do service link roles for things like backup and what have you, so you can run across the org, it's fairly permissive.
Yes, yeah. So the question is, and I haven't the documentation dig I did today didn't really sort of answer this for me. I'm going to see if I can talk to someone on the Marketplace team about it. But it looked like that role might need a little bit too much in the way of permission for a buyer to be comfortable with it. But who knows? Like that, this is a very uninformed opinion. Don't let it put you off giving it a go. It seems like a good way to consume some of those SaaS products. I think Marketplace as a whole. AWS are definitely this year, there's a theme of them trying to get more people on Marketplace. They've reduced the price of listing on Marketplace in this the partner keynote last week. They've been pushing a bunch of stuff in our direction to try and encourage us to help more customers onto Marketplace. Ultimately, it's a way of AWS taking a percentage cut of things that are sold that way, right? So they're obviously keen to be
because there's absolutely loads of services out there that you can run on your own, and here's the PDF on how to do it. So presumably they want to just take a slice of that.
Yeah, and the other use case of Marketplace is if you're in an enterprise who is able to buy from AWS, but onboarding another supplier, and particularly a smaller supplier.
Yeah, we talk about that quite a lot.
Yeah, you being able to buy through Marketplace is probably beneficial. And the third angle on this is that if you are part of an enterprise discount program with AWS, you're buying as an EDP, Marketplace spend can burn down your EDP commitment. So there are companies out there who, if they've committed to more spend than they can actually buy in the time of their EDP, which is not uncommon if they've negotiated it badly or their business has changed a lot in the meantime, then switching to buying things like professional services and SaaS products through Marketplace can help them close the gap. And obviously Amazon are quite happy about that because they get a chunk of change for it. So Marketplace is something that in actual fact many of our SaaS customers don't engage with, often because they are not selling these types of easily kind of engineering consumed products. They are more vertical business domain things. AWS are very keen to see us help more SaaS businesses onto Marketplace. No doubt that will become a topic for us in the coming year, but it's not a great fit for everybody, I guess. We've got some consulting offerings listed on Marketplace. I don't think anybody's ever bought them that way. Certainly no one's. Marketplace doesn't provide any useful discovery. It's as far as I can tell, it probably doesn't work for most SaaS vendors, but for the vendors that it does work for, it probably really works for them. And I'm hoping to get a bit more insight on that. It is a decent backlink
for SEO. So
yeah. And in part, the reason we listed our Control Tower deployment, for example, on Marketplace, was a way of saying this has been validated by AWS. Like it has had an FTR, Foundation Technical Review. Like AWS have signed off on this being a good solution, and I think that's probably helped from a kind of a sales perspective to some degree, but it didn't take a lot of effort to list a consulting offering on there. It's a bit more effort to do something like a quick launch or or any other level of marketplace integration. You can go very deep on this stuff and have the provisioning of your SaaS product actually be orchestrated by a marketplace purchase and so forth. And if you go down that route, there's a lot of work to do and a lot of stuff that partners can help with. So that's always good to know.
Nice. Well, conscious of time, I think we'll skip cyber insurance and come back to that in another episode because we have gone overtime again, which is great because with
sounds like me, to be honest.
I think it's all of us. We love to talk about this stuff, and it's easy to go on about it all day long. But we do try and keep our episodes to 30 minutes, and we have gone over. So. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, thank you to the Johns for your insights. That's both Goodall and Topper. It's been great to have you on as a guest, John, and we're not jealous at all that you were in Vegas last week. And hopefully we'll get to see you out there next year when we do get to go.
And we'll catch the same chest infections together.
Absolutely, yeah. Breathing that same recycled air. So thanks again. That was season 2, episode 42 of Logicast. If you enjoyed it, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell us. You can download Logicast from wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to see our lovely faces, you can see us on YouTube as well. So thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. We'll see you again next time. Cheers.